Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Logan with West Desert Shooter. Today we've got a bit of a full table here. We're shooting 3 different projectiles in this video. So, first up, we've got Sierra 7mm 168 grain boat tail hollow points. These are going to be directly influenced by the awesome results I've been getting with my Barnes Match Burner 171 grain bullets. Basically, similar weight class, both just boat tail hollow points. Should be direct competitors. I will say the Barnes has a longer overall profile and a higher ballistic coefficient. The middle ground is for fun. This is some Sierra 160 grain GameKings. Now, this is something that I would absolutely consider throwing in the rifle if I were to go after big game or something. I live in Utah, elk and deer, we're known for having awesome big game opportunities out here. Not to particularly say that my 708 is a good hunting rifle. Not saying that the cartridge is bad, but my rifle itself is very heavy and I wouldn't want to really hike it around a whole lot. However, it is insanely consistent. It holds 0 and it puts the first round on 0 every time. So that's really nice to have. So it's just as far as confidence with my rifles, my 708 is at the top at the moment. So that's why it would be interesting to have a hunting bullet, stashed away for a rainy day, right, guys? Other components, we're going to be shooting alpha brass. This has been once fired and once resized. I have not annealed it. I just got an annealing machine from AGS Customs. So looking forward to getting some content on that, but need to basically shoot my brass a few more times before I really start worrying about annealing. We're going to be using Federal Premium Large Rifle Match primers across all these different rounds. These have been an excellent primer for me and been having good results with them. Essentially, what this entire video is actually about is Bipod N150. This powder gave me really good results in 308, and the few times I've used it, I went back and checked my notes. Bipod N150 has really been a consistently awesome powder for me. So it shoots good groups and it shoots consistent muzzle velocities. Unfortunately, I really want N140. I really do. And I've been getting suggestions from you guys to try N140. I haven't been able to find it locally right now. It's really hard to do. So N150 was on the shelf a while back. I picked some up and it's been an excellent powder. It might even, maybe N150 is the one that's flying under the radar that's also excellent. I will get N140, but we're going to talk about N150 more later in the video. So the other thing we're going to be doing, because these are all similar weight class bullets, we got 168, 171, a little bit lighter on the 160 grain Sierra. Typically, as you lighten up your bullet weight, your powder charge can go up. So with this powder, we're going to shoot 2 different powder charges, and we're going to use the same powder charges for all 3 bullets. We're going to shoot 39 grains, we're going to shoot 40 grains. Now, Hornady, I've been listening to the Hornady podcast a lot lately and going back and re-listening to the dispersion stuff and your groups are too small and your groups are still too small. Basically getting into the statistically significant information. So you got to shoot enough for your data that you have to be statistically significant, creating a bell curve, all this stuff. Really, really interesting stuff. And the more times you listen to it, the more you really start to pick up and be like, oh, okay. So that's where I'm kind of going with this. And in their podcast, Miles talks a lot about how he does his load development. And essentially, he says he picks a powder charge that's safe, kind of gets him the speeds that he wants to go. He doesn't tweak it by a couple tenths here and there. He says you got to make big changes to see differences in powder charge, which I've always kind of felt that way. And that's kind of refreshing to hear. He talks about seating depth not being super important. Obviously, they're shooting a lot of Hornady bullets, so it depends on the exact bullet shape and profile you have. I wouldn't expect any of these to be super seating depth sensitive. The Barnes, we only ever shot a 2.80 or 2.85 overall length, and then we're shooting the 2.920. So we made a huge difference in overall length, and my rifle loves these sitting up close to the lance, so I didn't mess with it beyond that. It's happy with them right there, so I'm just going to keep shooting them right there. All right, guys. Yeah, let's talk about some other things here. So we're going to be shooting 39 grains and 40 grains of N150 across all 3 bullets. As far as overall lengths are concerned, Let's see here. Sierra, we're going to be shooting the 168 grains to 2.850. My maximum overall length I found in my chamber was 2.870, so these should be somewhere within 20 thousandths off the lands for the 168s. What's very interesting, the Sierra book data that I found shows 160 grain class bullets, but not the GameKing that I have here. So I checked its max overall length, and the overall length that we're going with is 2.775. That's what the book recommended for the other 160 class bullets that don't include this bullet, but my maximum overall length in this gun is 2.785. So these bullets, loaded to their book data, sit 10 thousandths off the lands loaded to their data. So it's just got a big blunt nose on the front, I suppose. Just the ogive profile sits forward, I guess, compared to these other bullets. And yeah, it's pretty interesting. It also has a pretty lopped off nose. It's got this very interesting like little star nose on the front of this guy. I'll get you an up close picture here. So maybe that makes the overall length, you know, if you cut the tip off of one of the 168s and you set it to the same overall length, all of a sudden your ogive is a lot closer because you moved the whole bullet forward, right? So it's kind of how that goes. So it's time to get out to the range. We're going to go shoot this, see how it does, 100 yards, and with my 7mm-08. So we will see you guys out at the range, and then we will come back to the bench and discuss our results. All right, guys, at the range, got my American Rifle Company build out here, 20-inch barrel, 1-to-8 twist, heavy Palma contour. Got our Tract Optics up top, American Rifle Company chassis and action. Barrel made by Preece Precision with our AB Suppressor Raptor 6-stack out up front. Pretty much it, MDT magazine and bipod. We got our FX True Ballistic chronograph over here I picked up from Utah Airguns. If you guys are interested in a chronograph that can give you a G7 BC specific to the bullet coming out of your gun, check that out at utahairguns.com. It's really cool. So let's see here. What do we want to shoot first today? We got the Sierras, the 168s and the 160s, and the Barnes 171s. Been shooting plenty of the Barnes. Let's start out with the Sierra 168s. While the rifle's nice and cool, I did just shoot a 5-shot confirmation to make sure this thing was where we wanted it to be. And speaking of, let's go ahead and move our zero down 1/2 mil so that it ends up in the middle of our target. Sierra 168s, 39 grains, starting out with N150. So we're doing something interesting today where we're going to be shooting 6 groups and then 3 different bullets. All 3 are loaded up with 5 rounds of 39 grain and 5 rounds of 40 grains of N150. So this will be an interesting test to see if different bullets provide different gaps in velocities, how consistent it is, and things in that line. So, chronograph's armed. Let's get some ammo in our magazine, and we will start shooting some groups. It does not appear to be too hot. I also got no Archimedes lever when extracting it, so we're on our way. Looking good. Nice. Had one go just high right, but not too bad. Overall great looking group. Happy with that. So now we're going to bump up our powder charge 1 grain up to 40 grains. I wouldn't anticipate much trouble considering what this first charge looked like on brass. I think it'll be happy to do the next grain. So unfortunately, because we're shooting different powder charges with each bullet here, we're only getting 5-shot groups for velocities and whatnot. It'll give you a good idea for speed, but your overall SD and whatnot can definitely be swayed. But not surprising, Vitavori coming through with a solid SD. This is probably going to be the powder we end up changing to at some point. Okay, friends, moving up to 40 grains of N150 with the Sierra 168. Took just a few minutes there to let the rifle cool down. Had a snack and a drink, so we're ready to rip now. Got our chronograph armed. Next 5 rounds. Let's do this. Looks great. Nothing scary at all. No extractor either. These Sierras definitely shoot. Okay. All right then. Happy with our performance with the Sierras. 20 thousandths off the lands. Looks good. Okay friends, it's time to try out this Sierra 160 grain GameKing. We're using the same powder as our match bullets, but there's no reason you don't want the same amount of consistency in a hunting round as you would in a precision rifle, you know, a match round. See how these Sierra 160 GameKings shoot out of this gun. On the Sierra load data that I have, they did not have this bullet particularly listed. I checked the maximum overall length of this bullet in my chamber, and then I checked the suggested overall length for the 160 grains. I think it was like a soft point and something else. It was another couple GameKings. It was not this specific one though. This guy loaded to Sierra's other data of what they suggest for their max overall length, or what their suggested overall length is. I am 10 thousandths off the lands in this rifle, near as I can measure. So this guy sits right up close to the lands at like a 2.775 overall length. And its maximum overall length was like 2.785 in my chamber, which I think is pretty crazy. So if you loaded these to 2.8, just assuming that they would fit in your short action, you better think twice and double check, because this is also a CIP chamber. It's got a longer throat in it than a standard SAMI does. So it might be jamming into your lands a significant amount, which you would probably notice at that point. But yeah, something very interesting about these, so keep an eye out for that. Okay friends, let's see how the 160s do. Okay. Pretty standard stuff, nothing to be scared of. A little bit of mirage. Okay. For a hunting bullet, really not bad. N150, man. I like it. All right, guys, quick cool down there for the rifle. Just a couple minutes with the barrel cool through it. Moving up to 40 grains with the Sierra 160 GameKing. I suppose I should have loaded the magazine before I started my video. It is starting to warm up out here. We've probably cracked into the 50s, maybe even to the mid 50s at this point. It's feeling good. It's about time to take the jacket off. All right. Beautiful. Okay guys, got the target camera running for these last two groups with the Barnes 171s. And I intentionally wanted to film my target with the 223 today, and we just finished up with the 223, so got a little bit of battery left. We're gonna use it for the 708. Let's see here, 39 grains, N150, and this is our Barnes 171 match burner. We've had great results shooting this 20 thousandths off the lands, 20, 25, something like that. And it's the same overall length that I've been shooting in my pet load and all that. I just changed the powder here. Once fired Alpha Brass, Federal Match Large Rifle Primers. The Alpha Brass is fantastic. Definitely check those guys out. And thanks for their support here on the channel with this 708 project. 39 grains is in the mag. Chronograph's armed. Velocity's right on track with what it did with the Sierras. Here we go. Looking good so far. Fantastic. Excellent. That, truthfully, what I'm really here for today is to see what this powder would do with this bullet. And so far, it's looking awesome. Sweet, so I'm gonna let the rifle cool, run through the barrel for about 2 minutes, and then we'll get back to shooting. Okay guys, let the rifle cool for just a minute. I also adjusted my chronograph here. The FX True Ballistic, I put in the correct projectile weight so that it gives me an estimated G7 BC. I already did that for the Sierras today, which is why I had to adjust it. So the 168 grains gave me a G7 of 303, and we're gonna see what the 171s do at this velocity. Should be higher than I've shot them before, considering we just bumped up a grain and we were already really close to where we were shooting them previously. So let's see what N150 does with the Barnes 171s of 40 grains. There's a little bit of mirage on that one, and it came just outside of that group, but I'm not mad about it. It's still looking fantastic down there. And there it is, guys. This rifle loves these Barnes bullets. 5 shots on the chrono. Very interesting trend here with these velocities between the 39 and 40 grains. We're going to talk about it. We'll go back to the bench. And yeah, I got to pack up. We'll see you guys there. All right, guys, and here we are back at the bench. So you did get to see some target footage of the Barnes bullets being shot. And I've got to say, those are the best groups of the day. That was awesome. It's always awesome to be able to record a group that just lays them in there and shoots awesome. The second group we shot, you know, looking pretty good. So let's talk about the Barnes real quick. Let's just get into that. Looking at these targets on screen here, the first group, 0.24. We got a sub-quarter MOA group of 5 shots at 100 yards. That's really hard to do. This rifle can consistently do it. It's done it for me multiple times with these Barnes 171s. It just loves these things. Can't argue that. It's pretty happy with it. However, the main reason I wanted to try N150 for all this is just fluff and bonus stuff. I really wanted to know how N150 and this bullet would get along, mainly because my IMR 4895 shoots as accurately as we saw this one group or 1 or 2 groups we saw. However, the velocities of IMR 4895 left a lot to be desired as far as extreme spread and SDs. And I'm consistently getting in the teens with IMR 4895. I've done it, I don't know, 5 or 6 times now where the SDs just aren't quite where we want them. Sometimes it's closer to 10. Seems like maybe on a 10 to 15 shot string, we get a little better SDs, somewhere 10 to 12, but I would really like to be under 10. N150 is what I was hoping to accomplish. I was hoping to accomplish better muzzle velocity spreads and lower SDs with N150. So on the Barnes, 39 grains. Unfortunately, this is only a 5-shot sample and not more. Typically, I go out and do these tests and I shoot 2 5-shot groups and then I give muzzle velocities across all 10. But I wanted to play with powder charge a little bit and see if we see any trends or anything like that. So starting off 39 grains with the Barnes 171s, velocity 2452, SD of 7.8, exactly what I was after. Hopefully with a larger sample size that SD stays low. In my experience with N150, it's always shot good consistent muzzle velocities, so I have pretty high confidence that it will, with an ES of 23. That one shooting that first group into 0.24 inches. That's just overall awesome load, loving it. Our second group that we fired with 40 grains of N150, velocity jumps up 50 feet a second up to 2501, an SD of 11.9, and an extreme spread of 30. This one shooting a group of 0.56 inches. Half-inch group, 5 shots, not mad about that. It's not quite that super beautiful 1-hole quarter MOA, but I'm not going to complain about a half-inch group, guys. That's good shooting with this. Now, one thing we saw there, we saw a higher SD at the higher powder charge, and then also we saw a larger group with the higher powder charge. This is a trend all day long. This is exactly what we see. 39 grains shoots a lower SD and a smaller group. It does this 3 times in a row. Is it luck? I don't know. When it does it 3 times in a row like that, that makes me kind of raise an eyebrow. Could it be barrel heat related? I'm not sure. I've shot good groups from rounds 6 to 10 before, so I'm not convinced that it's barrel heat. I think it's specifically that it prefers 39 grains. Maybe there's something internally in my barrel that just doesn't like that 40 grain load. It prefers the 39. So let's talk about the Sierra 168 since they're a competitor against the Barnes match burners. Throwing up the target up here, looking at our first group, 0.55, starting off our day with the 708 with that 0.55. We had that one round just outside the group that, always a bummer when that happens, but it does happen, so no big deal. Looking at our second group, not quite as pretty. Kind of something strange going on here. I'm not sure, but that seems off. Something's up with that, but we're shooting a 0.82 inch group. It's just very odd how 3 are touching and then 2 are touching as double grouping. And nothing else did that today. So that's a little strange, makes me raise my eyebrow yet again. So with the Sierra 168s, our 39 grain velocity, 2447, within a couple feet a second of the 171s. We had our SD of 5.6, really awesome SD across 5 shots, extreme spread of 17. Super happy with that. Moving up to 40 grains, we had a muzzle velocity of 2505 within a few feet a second of the 171s, SD of 11.5 and an ES of 34. Yet again, looking at a higher SD with the 40 grains and a higher ES with a bigger group. Interesting. So let's talk about the Sierra 160 grain GameKings. Shooting our first group at a 0.70 using 39 grains, and then our second group shooting a 0.67 at 40 grains. Like I say, I've shot better groups on the second half because I lay down and fire 5. I give the rifle 2 minutes to cool off or so, and then I shoot the next 5, and that's where I'll swap out rifles and shoot something else at the target and let the rifle sit in the shade and cool off while I do that. So essentially every time I'm trying a new bullet in this video, the rifle is starting off nice and cool. So yeah, those Sierra 160s aren't shooting quarter MOA, but they're shooting consistent at that 0.7 inch range across the 2 groups that we shot. And for a hunting bullet, hell yeah, that's a good shooting round right there. I'm not mad about that at all, especially when we're getting excellent muzzle velocities like we are here. So on those Sierra 160s, what muzzle velocities did we get? This is a lighter bullet, so we pick up a little bit of speed with each powder charge. So starting off at 39 grains, we're essentially at the 40 grains of velocity with the other 2 at the lower charge because it's a lighter bullet. So starting off velocity 2493 with an SD of 5.1 and ES of 14 at 39 grains. At 40 grains, we got 2538 with an SD of 9.1 and an ES of 24. Again, I would totally be happy to take those out and go after a big game with it. And yeah, I trust the rifle to do it. I think that I would obviously do a lot more testing and make sure that these are ready to go. But initial impressions are N150, the Sierra 160s, they get along. With the 168s, they get along. And with the 171s, they really get along. So it definitely seems happiest with this combination here. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I really wanted to find a powder in my cabinet that produced lower standard deviations than my IMR 4895. In our first test here, it's shown to do that. Not only that, it shot, let's see here. Yeah, its worst SD was 11 feet a second with 2 of our groups. Everything else was under 10 feet a second today. So N150 is proving to me it wants to shoot consistent muzzle velocities. So as far as being statistically significant or not, yes, there's a crazy amount of variables across all this, but the velocities are always consistent with N150. When I look at this page, I'm happy with all the velocities that I collected today. I definitely want to shoot more of that 39 grain, and I want to shoot more of the 40 grain, maybe even a little bit higher powder charge as well. Maybe look into our low data, see if we can bump it up. So as far as IMR 4895 is concerned, we're seeing very similar muzzle velocities per grain of powder that we feed it. Essentially 39 grains is getting us 2440 with 48.95. With N150, we're in that 24.50 range. So looking really good there. So overall, guys, super stoked on how N150 did for us here today. The Sierra bullets were shooting great, and the Barnes continue to shoot great for us. The Alpha brass is super consistent. I love that stuff. Definitely check out Alpha Munitions. I believe they have a small rifle primer variant for the 708 as well. That's super cool, especially right now where it's hard to find the large rifle match stuff. I might pick up a bit of those small rifle primer brass and maybe experiment with those a bit. But overall, loving the Alpha brass. I got 200 pieces of this when I first built my gun, and yeah, I'm looking forward to reloading these things a bunch of times. Now that I've got that annealer here, these should have a long, healthy life on this channel. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of the video that the Barnes 171s had a higher BC than the Sierra 168s. Now, my awesome chronograph that I got from Utah Airguns, that True Ballistic, the FX True Ballistic chronograph, actually measures the bullet as it flies the first 100 meters, I believe is what someone said. And yeah, so it will give you a ballistic, it will give you an estimated ballistic coefficient for every round that you fire, and then it will even average out your BCs that you got per shot and show you what the average BC is. So across 5 shots on this day, the Sierra 168s with the 40 grains charge gave us a G7 of 303. Now velocity will change your ballistic coefficient as well, so that's why I specifically said the 40 grain charge. So at 2,500 feet a second, G7 of 303 out of my gun. With the 171s, with the 40 grain charge, average BC G7 319. So just a little bit slippier there, and like I say, it's a longer overall length, a little bit stretched out bullet there, so that's not super surprising. But that doesn't mean that they will always shoot better just because they have a higher BC, which is another reason I tried the Sierras. I like Sierra bullets. I think they shoot great. So what happens if I try the 168s? Is that the magic sauce that I've been missing the whole time? But as far as I can tell, man, these match burners are really holding their own, and super impressed with those. I need to get a grip of these things. I need a stack of those boxes in my cabinet. Yeah, guys, all day long, our worst group was a .82. The next worst group was a .7. So rifle shooting awesome. The 708 super fun to play with, and that's how things go. I've had a few questions of people asking why didn't I choose the 7mm saw as far as the rifle, and the reason is because this isn't a PRS rifle. The main reason I got this rifle was for reloading content, and I wanted it to be more relatable to more people. There's way more people out there with a 708 than there are with the 7 saw. It's the same reason I didn't do a custom chamber in my rifle. I did a CIP chamber, again, not to give myself some crazy advantage. Basically, I wanted a standard chamber in a really nice barrel, and then it's just set up to shoot super comfortably and be very capable of being very accurate, especially when you feed it good components like any of these here. It shot really well for us today. Super stoked on that. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. Drop your comment down below. What 7mm bullet should I play with? What are you guys interested in seeing? And I'll see if I can't find some around my area. So thank you guys for your time. We will see you in the next one.